So, I want to do a video. I'm going a bit on spec. I'm a big believer and don't believe anything until you see it with your own eyes. And this is from my gut. This is something that I believe. And if it doesn't correlate with reality, I would still probably choose to believe it as a religion because it's like core tenet stuff. But I really do believe it to be true, and that is that the dominant force in our universe is electric. I know science is dominated by gravity and electromagnetic radiation is considered a static force, infinite in its potential, but instantly equalizing. Ergo, not the source. It's instantly going to equalize itself, so its force value is negated. That's the argument that comes from kind of the Newtonian. I don't think it's an argument. It's not. It's kind of unspoken at this point, but it's not what I believe. Anyway, it's very difficult to explain in short term, but basically the universe is infinite. Time is not linear. If it exists at all, it is a feature of the space that you occupy. And even the space that you occupy is only within a dimensional space, and that's within an infinite layer of dimensions in which you may not exist at all. It's once you go into infinite anything, but especially infinite layers of dimensions that within themselves have endlessness, that is crazy talk. At least when you try to explain it, because it's really just something you have to hold in your mind more than something that you can really explain. But endlessness, as just what it is, right? So not just time, not just space, but delving into electricity and the infinite power of that dimension and the infiniteness of that, to me, is like the end all be all of reality. Okay, so if you can kind of get where I'm coming from, I'm going to talk about Three Eye Atlas for a second. So, because I believe that there are also social consequences to that belief, as opposed to, and I'm maybe misusing the term juxtaposition, but as like a counter weight to where I'm coming from, understands the traditional mindset of, I would say, most people in the world, or my world, is that the universe is finite, everything is finite, everything is very limited. And even in physics, where you think of the whole universe and you think telescopes, and it's all still very limited, and an origin story that creates a finite mindset and a finite base position where I don't at least want to come from, and I don't believe I am coming from that position at all. I'm coming from the position of everything is infinite, okay? And that's where I find my base belief. It's just the infiniteness of everything. including dimensions. But when I see the sun and the light that comes from it, I understand that it's the source of all our energy on Earth. But I view the physics behind that a little bit differently than I would say most people, where the weight of the mass causes the fusion, and that fusion within is the sole source of the sun's energy. And from that, we get all of our light. So essentially the argument, not again, there's no argument. The understanding of modern scientists is that the power behind the sun is gravity, and that the accumulated mass has powered that essentially infinite light source for Earth, for all of our existence, right? I look at it as a balancing act. I don't deny gravity in any way, shape, or form, but I look at it as like a co-arising situation. As energy increases, mass increases. As energy decreases, mass decreases, and so on. But the light, the source of our energy, is like a candle in the wind, right? So electricity is the wind that is providing the electrical stimulation to generate the plasma that we call light. By the time it gets to us, right? That form of radiation is ultimately being excited by electrical characteristics that our solar system, our galaxy, and at least parts of our universe, relatively speaking, are bathed in. In other words, there are essentially electrical currents that flow through our universe that are following, materials, so to speak, you would imagine, and that feeds fusion reactions that are taking place and the waste products being produced with that additional energy that stimulates the plasma. And that plasma is our sun, right? And when I look at 3i Atlas, and the only argument that people are saying about it is that it is brighter than it is expected. Now, because I'm like really into energy and high energy physics, I've done a fair amount of research and thinking about dusty plasma and what it would take to make that a viable energy source. And I just found that while it's viable, it is not impressive without like layers of value added services such as waste disposal and material harvesting. If you were to accumulate those values, in other words, you are decomposing nuclear waste into valuable materials while generating waste energy and using that waste energy to generate electrical energy. In that scope is a viable technology, but that would take some highly technical engineers to dedicate a significant amount of time when they could, quite frankly, more easily burn fuel and mine those same materials, which they currently do at a much lower cost. So, all that sidetrack tangent aside, I looked into it. The idea of generating a plasma from a dust storm, essentially, with an electrical current is exactly what it is. That's what they do, and the type of material that you're transmuting, which is the objective, in that process, you're changing the atomic structures of material through nuclear decay and ultimately randomly flocculation and fusion. Okay, there's fusion that's happening, and that fusion that is happening spontaneously and randomly in the dusty plasma, which is not an energy efficient way to generate electricity in today's world, but does exist. That fusion is the source of both our sun's light, or the outer corona or coma of our sun that is generating the plasma, and the additional light that is coming off of 3i Atlas. So I consider this validating to my perspective, but I am biased. Like I said, I would hold this position, and even if it wasn't confirmed, and I haven't confirmed this observation with my own eyes, nor would I know what the expected brightness of an interstellar comet would be, right? So scientists are saying it's brighter than they expected it to be. Well, their expectations are such of what and why, I don't know. But if it is brighter than they expected it to be, I think that the clear explanation is that fusion is happening in the coma. Fusion is happening because of the electrical currents that it's being exposed to, and that electrical current is a very inefficient, dusty plasma, low temperature fusion reactor. It's incredibly inefficient. It will power a few light bulbs, and that's what it's doing. So, but it's fusion, and it's a very small scale simulation of the fusion that is taking place on our sun. In my opinion, a two fuel burner is burning on a fusion reaction taking place from the gravity, and then there is a second fusion reaction taking place from the electrical reaction between the proton-rich core and the electron-rich atmosphere. In that contrast, in that transition, there is a second fusion on the outside. It is not as efficient, but brighter. Electrons are hot.